In vitro fertilization is back in the news after the U.S. state of Alabama's Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos are children under the law. In response, many U.S. politicians have rushed to defend IVF. But while legislation around the world is ever-changing, the Catholic Church's stance remains clear. In vitro fertilization is immoral. The basis for this stance dates back to a 1987 document published during the papacy of John Paul II, titled Donum Vitae. The document says that any technology that separates the sexual act between a husband and wife from the creation of human life is morally illicit. It reads, "Such fertilization entrusts the life and identity of the embryo into the power of doctors and biologists, and establishes the domination of technology over the origin and destiny of the human person." Another document, titled Dignitas Personae, was published under Pope Benedict XVI. It reiterates that life is, quote, used, selected, and discarded during artificial reproduction, and that the technology engages in a purely utilitarian treatment of embryos. And Francis's pontificate has been no different. He has continued to uphold the Church's position since the beginning of his papacy.
Noi stiamo vivendo un tempo di sperimentare con la vita, a sperimentare male. Di fare figli invece di accoglierli come dono, come ho detto. Di giocare con la vita lì. State attenti, che questo è un peccato contro il Creatore, contro Dio Creatore, che ha creato le cose così.
Within the in vitro fertilization process, embryos can be selected or destroyed based on the parent's desired gender and genetic makeup. On average, when a couple undergoes the IVF process, about 10 embryos are created. A majority of these are frozen indefinitely, destroyed for research purposes, or deliberately discarded. Over 1 million embryos are currently frozen in the United States alone.
Even if IVF was done in such a way that no embryos are destroyed, no embryos are frozen, every embryo is implanted, the Church would still oppose it. When you produce something or commission something, you have a certain type of ownership and a certain type of power over that thing. And that type of relationship is completely inappropriate among human beings.
One cycle of IVF costs around $15,000 in the United States. Expenses aside, the Church argues the practice turns human life into something manufactured, and that this approach to life has grave moral consequences on society. Donum Vitae says, forms of discrimination between human beings could come to be legitimized. This would constitute an act of violence and a serious offense to the equality, dignity, and fundamental rights of the human person. Over 8 million babies have been born through in vitro fertilization since the technology was developed 4 decades ago. And while the Church's objection to the practice is clear, it also emphasizes that the lives created through IVF are valued equally and made in the image and likeness of God.